Well, good morning. The time being 9 a.m, I declare open the general meeting for the Gladstone Regional Council for Tuesday the 17th of March 2026. We have all are present this morning, so no apologies. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is messages of condolence. No messages of condolence, councillors. We'll move through to the next item, which is prior notifications of conflicts of interest, and I'll hand over to Councillor Patrick.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would like to declare that I, Councillor Leanne Patrick, have previously declared a declarable conflict of interest in relation to G 4.1 contract and expenditure approval for tender 10725 construction of the Boyne Tenham Aquatic Centre, as my husband, Nathan Patrick's business, McDonald's Boyne Island, is situated within 500 metres of the proposed project site, and there is potential that the development could have or could be perceived to have a financial impact on the business. In accordance with my previously declared conflicts of interest, I will leave the meeting for this agenda item.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Any further conflicts of interest?
No further.
Thank you. I'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is the Mayor's statement. And I'll start with a couple of positives first. Of course, we've had the Mary Poppins Combined Schools musical, over 5,300 tickets sold across 9 shows at the Gladstone Entertainment Convention Centre, and shout out to everyone who was involved in that, not just the students, but everyone in the background to make a fantastic event for our community. On Sunday the 9th of March was on to International Women's Day breakfast on International Women's Day, and then the following day at the Entertainment Convention Centre, GEA hosted International Women's Day lunch as well. And the star of the show, of course, Councillor Patrick. I think you did an amazing job there speaking at the Entertainment Centre. Obviously there was other keynote speakers as well, but It was fantastic to hear from you too.
Thank you. I would just like to shout out to Candice Harvey, who was the keynote speaker.
She definitely was. But
she got everyone very energised.
She got them up and moving. That was right. Excellent. But of course, the biggest issue in our region in the last couple of weeks has been the weather event. Obviously, significant rainfall in our region prior to this council meeting, and of course that meant that sections of our region were cut off. Roads were closed between Miriam Vale and Agnes Water, Baffle Creek, around Lowmead, and of course Oyster Creek areas and Captain Creek. So we have had our local disaster management group stood up and been working with our local communities. I went on Friday with 2 councillors, including our recovery chairs, to Agnes Water, Baffle Creek and around the Lowmead area to see firsthand the impacts. Thank you, Councillor McClintock and Councillor Holzheimer, for joining me. There was only 2 seats in the car, so I couldn't take anyone else. And thank you to the Deputy Mayor for remaining in Gladstone to look after our guests as we were hosts for the Central Queensland Regional Organisation of Council meeting on the same day. Since then, we've obviously been able to reopen the Fingerboard Road, reopen Hills Road Bridge, and reopen the Essendine Bridge as well, and of course Lowmead Road too. So there's still probably some other roads across the region that have been severely damaged, and we're working with the Queensland Reconstruction Authority to get those addressed, but that won't happen overnight. However, we have set up some recovery hubs, so disaster recovery community outreach sessions will happen across the region. These are the ones that have been initially organised, and there potentially will be more, including one in the city. But Baffle Creek on Wednesday from 3 to 5 p.m. at the BCCI building there on Coast Road. In Agnes Water on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Community Centre on Springs Road. In Lowmead on Sunday from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Lowmead Community Hall on Lowmead Road. In Rosedale on Sunday from 1:30 to 3:30 at the Rosedale Community Hall. In Mount Larkham at the Mount Larkham Community Hall on Monday from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. In the Boyne Valley at Naguran on Tuesday from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. at the Naguran Hall. And in Calliope from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. at the Calliope Community Hall on Don Cameron Drive. As I said, we will open other community hubs where we can, and of course we're looking to open one in the city as well. We realise people were impacted. There are a number of grants available, but the one that I know most people are interested in is the hardship funding, which of course is generally available to residents that have been isolated for a number of days and or lost power, which we're aware that many residents in our region did. So some areas have already been enacted for personal hardship funding, and at our meeting yesterday with our staff, we've of course tried to fix some anomalies where Oyster Creek area around Taunton, Mount Tom, Coliseum and Mount Moriah were not initially included, although we thought they were, just because of their localities. Some people will refer to some of those areas as just Baffle Creek, but of course, I'm sure that residents of Mount Moriah will tell you they live in Mount Moriah, not Baffle Creek. So we've adjusted the areas so that those communities can be included, and where we can, where appropriate, well, we'll seek to update our application to the Queensland Government and Federal Government to include other areas. We just, of course, need that data. And in the meantime, we're encouraging businesses and primary producers to fill the survey out on the Region Watch website and the Region Watch link so that we can collect the data and support them through grants and funding from the state and federal government as well. And I realise primary producers are out there fixing fences right now, and I realise businesses are getting on with the job, but also the team at GAPDL have very happily volunteered to help our small business community and our tourism sector. So please reach out, make sure that you fill out those surveys so that your business or your primary production can potentially source funding from the state and federal government through disaster funding. And as for residents that were impacted, we're doing the best we can to make sure that their residents are supported through the state and federal government and the Department of Communities and the Queensland Reconstruction Authority as well. However, it's not an easy case to claim, so we just need all the data we can, and our team are working around the clock to get the data together to put a case forward to the Queensland Reconstruction Commission, which is why it's very important that people turn up to our recovery hubs, and that's why I've listed them there, and they're on my social media, they're on the council's social media, and I'm sure councillors are sharing that as well. That's it for the Mayor's statement on current issues. As I said, that's the big issue for us at the moment is our recovery hubs, and I thank the team, Emma and Mark and Jules and everyone who will be involved in supporting those recovery hubs, and to Brianna and her team as well. Thank you. We'll move on to the confirmation of the minutes, G2.1 for the 3rd of March 2026. Thank you, Councillor Holzheimer. Seconded, Councillor Davis. All in favour? Motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Now we have a deputation from Robert Parker, who's the founder of Nuclear for Climate Australia, and I'll hand over to you, Rob, for your deputation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the councillors and staff for affording me the opportunity to be able to carry out this presentation on nuclear energy for Queensland, but also for Australia more broadly. I'll give you a little bit of a rundown on myself. So it was in my early 30s that my wife and I settled in the town of Blackwater, and we lived there for about 3 years. My wife was a GP out there. I was a civil engineer working in the infrastructure of the town of Blackwater on the subdivisions, water supply, sewerage, and that sort of thing. And assisting some of the mining companies out there in their infrastructure. Following that, I moved into Rockhampton, and with a contractor there, I assisted in the construction of a concrete reservoir for Gladstone City Council, as it was at that time, and then completed the earthworks at Stanwell Power Station. So over a period of about 5 years, we had I had quite a strong engagement with this region. It was sometime thereafter when I was working on a small weir at Eidsvold in the south of the state that I became recognised with all of the work I was also doing overseas at the same time, that I became quite concerned about the issue of man-made climate change. And I wanted to do something about that. And I formed a relationship with a gentleman called the grandfather of climate change science, Professor James Hansen at Columbia University. He's also the director of NASA Space Goddard Institute. And James convinced me and many others that if we were to get on top of emissions, but also to do it at a low cost, nuclear would be an essential part of the mix. Mix, I say, not exclusive. So I founded this little organisation I've got called Nuclear for Climate Australia. We derive no funding from any external organisations. It's a totally voluntary effort. Along the way, I was also actually the endorsed candidate for the ALP in the seat of Goulburn in New South Wales, and unfortunately I wasn't able to convince them that we needed to be going for nuclear, but hopefully in the future that will change. So I'll come now to the presentation I've got, and this image we see at present on the screen contrasts the dilemma that we have in trying to deliver economic low-carbon energy. On the left-hand side, we see the problem we have when we have wind and solar with their variability requiring significant amounts of gas backup and batteries and storage to deliver electricity safely into a modern industrialised economy. Industrialised is the key term here because Gladstone, particularly with the wonderful industries you've got here, requires very reliable energy. And some people say, oh, we can have demand response to fluctuate our demand with respect to variability, but no, that really doesn't work economically very well. On the right-hand side, we have what we could get to, which is pretty much what they're doing in France right now, where they have extremely low emissions. They have about medium cost electricity in Europe. It's not the highest, certainly not the lowest. And they're running on about 70% nuclear, with a range of wind and solar and batteries and gas coming in as well. That type of reliability is the sort of thing that I'd like to discuss today. So in the content today, I'm going to go into some of the environmental aspects of wind and solar. We'll move over into a discussion about economics, how we can go through this transition to ultra-low carbon, but also low cost with nuclear plus wind plus hydro plus solar. We'll look at the share of nuclear capacity, which our analysis shows we could handle by each state. We look at reactor sites more closely and key issues in Queensland. This is the problem we're currently suffering in, particularly here we've got Clark Creek Wind Farm in central Queensland. I mean, to be perfectly honest, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Some people would like this, some people see it as bird grinder. I happen to fall in the latter camp, which would see that the average lifespan of a raptor flying through that lot would be in minutes, not days. It has a profound impact on the flora and fauna of the region going through the development of those. We're clearing hills, we've got massive amounts of road clearing for the construction of these, and it has a tremendous impact on the local environment when we try to industrialise our environment in this way. We see there on the left-hand side bird and bat deaths, which are occurring all the time. And on the construction of those wind farms, they are wiping out massive amounts of the fauna in those environments. Now, that environmental issue is a problem. If it was giving us some profound benefit, one might come up with a value judgment that you've got to break eggs to bake a cake. However, what we are actually seeing is it is delivering neither low-cost energy nor is it delivering ultra-low emissions. The whole hope for wind and solar was that we would end up with some form of sustainable future, yet unfortunately it's not happening. And Germany, which has tried it, and they lead us by around about a decade, we see the recent announcement by Friedrich Merz, the current German Chancellor, where he's labelled the country's complete shutdown of nuclear power as a serious strategic mistake, citing it's been a major error that's crippled their energy capacity and it's forced a reliance on coal and gas and it's given them the world's most expensive electricity. And it's driving the Germans effectively into a recession on an industrial basis. They are recognising this and they're actually going to be moving back towards some nuclear. More recently, we see the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen. She is trying to promote a return to nuclear throughout Europe because they are seeing increasingly this requirement on LNG exports out of Qatar, places like that, an increasing reliance on coal, and they are not able to compete with the rest of the world industrially. She's called it a great strategic mistake, and they're trying to amend that. Australia doesn't want to follow down that path. We can't follow down that path. And our analysis, assisted by Dr. Robert Barr of Electric Power Consulting, who's the former president of the Electrical Engineering Society of Australia, has assisted me with this sort of analysis. Here we are looking at 4 different strategies. In gold, down the bottom of each column, that's the cost in cents per kilowatt hour to generate electricity. The green is the cost to distribute that electricity on the grid and in the transmission systems. The left-hand side is where the government would like to take us with what we call the step change scenario. There's a less ambitious progressive change scenario as the second column. The third column along is the sort of thing we possibly could have seen with the coalition's previous campaign over about 40% nuclear. And the best, most optimum solution for Australia would be something like what they've got in France, is the fourth column along. Now you can see at the top of each column the cost, not the price, the cost of the electricity generation. A nuclear scenario with some wind and solar is about half the cost of excluding nuclear out of the mix. But the interesting thing is to also look at the emissions. That's shown in the heavy red line, where you see that if you go for your nuclear on what we call a life cycle emissions basis, life cycle being that analysis which takes not only its emissions where you generate the electricity, but also what went into making it and what goes into disposing of it. And that we see with nuclear at high levels, we're at around about 1/5 of the emissions of things like the step change scenario. That type of analysis therefore feeds into this image here. And I apologise for the complexity of it, but this is essentially a plan for the transition from our fossil fuel, existing fossil fuel base, into a nuclear base. At each point along the horizontal axis, we're going from 2023 on the left to 2060 on the right. The height of all of those elements is the amount of electricity we're producing on the national electricity market. So on the left-hand side, it's about 200 terawatt hours per year, of which Queensland's good for around about 31% of that. And on the right-hand side, where we would be in 2060. And we see a mix where on the left-hand side, we have our black coal down the bottom, brown coal transitioning into some gas. Then we have rooftop solar, utility solar. In blue, we've got wind, and in darker blue, we have hydro. And what we see is that as we integrate nuclear from around about 2040, we steadily roll out the nuclear, we get ourselves essentially to an ultra-low carbon emissions grid by 2060. And that's shown in that red trace, dropping down very dramatically as the nuclear comes in. The dotted red line shows just the emissions from burning fossil fuels, where the nuclear virtually takes you to zero from 2050. Now, I won't go through every part of this table because that can be a bit daunting. Let's just focus. This is the share. So in that previous image, the amount of nuclear one would have in 2060 would be about 24.8 gigawatts. How do you break that down by state? Well, Queensland is the third line along. It's at about 31% of the NEM demand, so you'd assign 31% of your nuclear to Queensland. In 2050, that would give you, in the fourth column along, that would give you 4 units. And in 2060, that would give you 6 units. The other states are sitting in the table. We came up to this region late last year and spent a week up here going around to a host of different sites. I'll show these on a map later, but essentially we looked at regions up around the northern part of central Queensland, from Stanwell across to the Fitzroy. We came down, then we had a look at the Gladstone region, and then went further south towards Bundaberg and Maryborough. Out of the 10 sites that we looked at, we really only need for Queensland 2 or 3 sites. Okay, so here's 10 possible locations, but of those, 2 or 3 would do the business. On this, I've put down 3 possible ones: Thompson's Point, Rod Bay, and Tandora down near Maryborough. And we see on here, in 2050, you would have 4 units. In 2060, you'd have 6 units. There's a misprint, I believe, on your printouts that says 7, but it's actually 6. The why I picked those 3, it's quite arbitrary actually, but because in addition to the plants, we've got to look at the transmission costing. It's good to know, you can't just build them, you've got to plug them in. And so in plugging them in, that was a method to derive a cost for plugging them into the grid. That enabled us to come up with a cost. Now, our cost is based on plants that I have visited. I've visited quite a number of nuclear plants globally over the last few years. But the plants that we're looking at are the ones shown in that image. There's SAL Units 1 and 2. I was at SAL Unit 1 in January of last year. It was a nice cold day in Korea at the time, and they were churning out 103% of their rated capacity. They love cold weather. The total cost of using those sorts of plants through to 2060 in Queensland, based on current costs, would be $72.7 billion. You'd add in about $3.9 billion for transmission, would take it to $76.6 billion. That is for a system of reactors which would last for a minimum of 8 years out to probably a century. Okay? This is an investment for a very long time, not stuff that falls over after 30 years or so. They get along on coastal locations, which I'm very strongly promoting the use of coastal locations. They get along quite well with the wildlife. And in this image, we see those sites grouped. So I've said we've got sites we could look at Stanwell, Thompson's Point, Curtis Island in the north. Then we come down to Boyne River, Tannum Sands, Hammerkill, Rod Bay. The strong thing is that these plants would need to be able to get cooling using either extremely large estuaries or seawater cooling. You could come further down south and you'd come down to a place called Meara on the coast, Tandura or Tinninbar down towards the Mary River region. These are some views of the types of sites. And it's interesting in this one to look at, on the top right image, the size of the type of footprint that a nuclear power plant would, and this is actually scaled to the size of that coastline. So typically a 3-unit plant would be about 650 metres by about 400 metres. It's really quite a low footprint. In conclusion, large nuclear power plants are the least cost source, this is on a system-wide basis, of ultra-low carbon energy. Nuclear energy has the lowest environmental impact of all generating sources. We must learn from and collaborate with success stories, especially Canada and South Korea, both of which I've visited. And we can build these in Australia. At the very minimum, from the first few, we would be able to do 80% of their input here in Australia, and that could elevate into it. And we need to, with all urgency, get rid of the anti-nuclear legislation so we can stop procrastinating. Thank you.
We have some questions, Councillor Wagner.
You wanted some questions, so I've got a few for you. So thank you for the presentation. Can you hear me there?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, just a little bit of context here. So can you tell us a bit about yourself and a bit about the organisation and, what is your interest in this?
My interest in this is, as I stated in my introduction, my interest in this is to ensure the industrial wealth of Australia as we go forward, and to ensure we do that in a way that we protect our environment and we pass on a wealthy nation that's pretty smart for our future generations. There is no other interest apart from that.
Okay, and just your background, can you just give us a little bit of like...
Yeah, I'm a
where you
civil...
come from?
I have a degree in civil engineering, a master's degree from the University of New South Wales, and I've got a master's degree in nuclear science from the Australian National University. So that's where I actually went to do my academic understanding of the operations of these. And I've also toured probably 10 different plants globally and held quite a number of discussions with people experienced in the operations and running of nuclear power plants.
No. So would you be considered, sorry, pardon my ignorance, would you be considered expert in this area? How would you
I
position
would say
yourself?
I'm a learned armchair expert. When you sit beside the people that run plants, who understand the nuts and bolts, the foibles and the failings and the problems, I'm by no means an expert. I am sufficiently knowledgeable to assist in the debate within Australia, but no, I'm not a complete nuclear expert.
Yeah, and so has this sort of gained momentum for you? Like, are you getting other people on board? Where do you feel you're positioned at this stage? Are you starting from down here, or do you think you're actually making inroads?
It fluctuates. If one looks at the work that I and other people who are trying to do this, if we go to the sorts of statistics we saw publicly going into the last election, 12 months out from the last election, Australia was running on around about 55% in favour of nuclear. Yeah. As we drew close to that election, it dropped down into the low 40s. Okay, so the Australian public has a difficulty with nuclear, and it needs a lot of the sort of discussion that we're able to have here now, so that it can go further into the community. I have a website where I'm putting all of these plans up, and I engage on social media to the best that I can to hold that discussion.
Excellent. And also, so obviously we live in an area where there's, has been known to be natural disasters, cyclones and what have you, and you're identifying some sites in our region as potentials, and like for those of us that lived through Chernobyl and other disasters and grew up in an environment like no nuclear, how would you allay our fears about the potential risks, given our location? We're close to the ocean, it's the pristine barrier reef. So how would you allay our fears?
Okay, if we go to, Chernobyl wasn't near the ocean. Chernobyl was a reactor that would never have been built in the Western nation, and it was under rather unusual operations, almost negligent operation. Fukushima, where I've visited, and I've gone around Fukushima province, in Fukushima city, I took radiation readings.
Sorry, it's near the water, isn't it?
Yeah. And in Fukushima city, there's less radiation there than in my office in Berrima. Okay. No member of the public received a high radiation dose as a result of Fukushima. No one. There have been no deaths from radiation as a result of Fukushima. 19,000 people died at Fukushima, or in that province, as a result of a tsunami that drowned them. Okay. One could say, don't populate low-lying areas in Japan. That's the more fundamental problem, not the nuclear. If anything, one could say that with those three meltdowns recording no deaths, it indicates that even in the worst possible circumstances, you end up with an energy system that doesn't kill anybody. what is happening in Fukushima with the Japanese people, and I was told by the Chief Technical Officer Advisor to the Fukushima Rehabilitation Commission, he said, Mr. Parker, what we're doing here in this rehabilitation is not informed by science. It's an act of atonement. And so you've got to petition the reality, I guess, from anxieties. And those anxieties are hard to deal with. 3 Mile Island was another one that had profound anxieties. Again, the dosages that came out of 3 Mile Island were so low that no one received any high-level radiation doses, and no one was harmed in the public.
So in our area here, like I see Rods Bay, Myra, and some other areas that have been identified. And if you haven't looked at the modelling for sea change and the encroachment of water, how have you come up with those sites? Because some of those are in those really low-lying areas that are at risk with climate change.
Yeah. Nuclear power plants are built, you elevate them above the seawater. So you don't leave them low-lying where you could get inundation. So you build a combination of seawalls and you build a combination of elevated rock platforms, and you site them at an appropriate height above sea level to insulate them from those sorts of impacts, together with seawalls. And we see that done globally. You see it done in the United Kingdom right now, where they're building them on large estuaries. You see that's at Sizewell, for example. You see it in France at Flamanville, where they've recently completed theirs. You see it in Sweden, in Finland, all around the globe. Countries are placing these on sea locations, but they put them suitably above long-term calculable heights to arrest any problems with encroachment of seawater or tsunami risk. And Australia is uniquely stable in terms of seismic activity. So we really don't have a seismic issue to be of any concern in this country.
And what about the, sorry to ask these questions, because I think these are what residents, I suppose, would be asking us.
Thank you.
Your cyclones. So obviously we do have cyclones here too. So what are the risks with cyclones of having a plant like this?
A nuclear power plant is probably uniquely positioned compared to just about any other generating device to ride through a cyclone at full production. You're talking about a device here that can sustain the impact load of a 767 airliner. They face this all the time in the United States right now, particularly down in the southern parts of the US, where cyclonic activity comes in and hits their nuclear plants all the time. And they ride through the massive blizzards that they're getting through their jet stream blizzards. And they ride through those. Nuclear is probably the most robust energy system you can get to tolerate weather events.
And the other one is they've got to be near the transmission grid. Obviously,
Yes.
I don't understand nuclear, so, I'm fairly new to this. They've got to be there. How do we transport this energy?
We would need to. That's why we've looked at the existing Queensland grid, and we've looked at how we would connect the plants into that. That's to some degree why the sites were nominated on the plan that we've looked at. Probably the hub in this region is around the Gladstone switchyards, which you've got right now, and one at Baldercombe. And we would connect, for example, if you built ones at Curtis Island or at Thompson's Point, you'd connect directly into those. Likewise, Rod Bay, you'd come up from the south and connect into the existing grid. And you would build new transmission lines to connect to those grids. And those are the things we've costed. The ones further down south, if you take the existing coal plants of Callide, Stanwell and Gladstone, you take them as a generating group and you replace that group with nuclear, then it becomes basically pull that lot out and plug this lot in to that same grid. The bigger issue is not so much this region as further south, where if you're to try to replace the coal plants and the large gas plants in the south and southwest of the state, then you need longer transmission lines down there, and so some of the transmission extensions down there would be up to 90 kilometres. So they get a bit bigger. But up here, you're talking about lengths of only about 20 or 30 kilometres. They're not particularly big.
Okay, so sorry about this, everyone. One last question. So if this did gain momentum and it was seen as something supported in our region, would you be developing this, or who would you see actually developing this?
Let's take the precedent of what we see globally. Nuclear energy in the vast majority of nations is the policy and area of influence of generally the major governments or the major state governments. And as we had in Australia with our coal plants in Queensland, Victoria and New South Wales, we saw those developed by our state governments. Now, sure, they passed over into private enterprise, but they were the initiatives of forward-thinking people in state governments at the time. And that's how one would do it in Australia. This notion that you would hang around and wait for developers to come in is a bit fanciful. You would really transition under a combination of federal and state government, because there are federal legislations that need to be covered, and energy generation is that of the state government responsibility. And so it really needs education at both those levels. Financing would be by probably federal funding, because of the advantaged rates of interest that we gain by that mechanism. And that was foreshadowed by Ted O'Brien, who was the shadow energy minister in the prior to the last election. Some people were a bit aghast that a Liberal guy would come up with that, but it's just the precedent of what's happened globally.
Sorry, and so what would you like us to do with this information? Like, what's our takeaway from today? What would you like us to leave?
I think the takeaway here is when we visited your aluminium smelters here, we went around, and I have existed in this community, albeit a few decades ago, understanding that Gladstone region is the industrial hub of this state. And it's got to be secured for the long term. The aluminium smelters have got to be secured. The LNG plants have got to be secured. You've got to have low cost, ultra low carbon energy to secure that industry. The community of Gladstone needs to be able to put their hand up through their elected representatives sitting here and make the case clearly to the state government of Queensland that this needs to be on the table and considered together with wind and solar. It's not a black and white either or. It's a shared deal. And that's the case that I believe needs to be made. And the industrial rebirth of Australia around a nuclear fleet would be massive. We see it in Canada, where they've got their 20 reactors in Ontario. We're seeing it in the United States now, where they're looking at rebirth. Australia needs to participate in it.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Wagner. Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Cameron and Patrick?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, that's a pretty interesting concept you got there. We have existing coal-fired power stations across the state. Yep. Is there not an option there to retrofit them to nuclear? Is that not an option in your plan?
If I take, and I've looked at that quite clearly. Yeah. The key thing, if I had to pick the 10 points out of a nuclear power plant you need to do, I'd say 6 of them are cooling. They generate a lot of heat. Yeah. Okay. And you have to exhaust that heat into the environment. And to achieve that, you need reliable long-term cooling. And you can't go long-term by competing for freshwater inland resources. That's just, so that, in my mind, puts a big question mark over trying to do it at Callide. You'd want to do a very careful analysis on Stanwell to make sure that Fitzroy was going to hold up for what you're talking about. But that's why I've enumerated the coastal sites. Gladstone is putting its cooling water, the existing coal plant, into an estuary that I'm not sure would be large enough, but the analysis needs to be done. I won't write it off. But I think the other thing about Gladstone Power Station, it is quite close to the existing runway. And so I've got a question mark. I don't write anything off, but some sites, you look at them and you say, yep, that's a goer. Some, oh, gee, we've got to do a lot of work to make that one work. So you understand, it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah, well, because Gladstone is saltwater cooled, that's
Yes.
quite unique in itself because it does have the ability to ramp up and down and adjust its supply.
It does, it
Yeah.
does. But you've got that large estuary there that it's dumping into. And if you're to put 2,800 megawatts of nuclear, I'm not saying it can't be done. I'd say the analysis has got to be done to underpin it.
Yes, well, the main advantage of that is, to use your term, it is already plugged in,
Yes, yes,
which has got to be a big advantage.
correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron. Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for your presentation this morning. I do have two questions, and they've probably been a little bit answered on the back of Councillor Wagner's questions. But I just want to frame it from a community's point of view, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes.
So it's a little bit of a story, so I hope that's okay. So imagine Gladstone 15 to 20 years from now, maybe even 30 years from now. The harbour is bustling and industries are humming and families are still building their lives here. And we are flourishing as a community. A new energy product has been built on the outskirts of the region. Something big, something meant to power the next generation for jobs and keeps Gladstone strong. Most days everything runs smoothly. People barely think about it. Kids go to school, workers head to the port, and the region keeps moving forward. But every now and again, someone wonders, what if something goes wrong, really wrong? Not because they expect it to, not because they want to stir fear, but because they care about this place, the beaches, the fishing spots, the industry that keep this town alive, and the safety of their families. They remember that Gladstone has weathered cyclones, industry incidences, and environmental challenges before. They know that big project brings big responsibilities, and they know that asking questions isn't a negativity. It's how communities stay strong and informed. So the people of Gladstone, we gather together in a town hall one evening, parents, workers, business owners, teachers and elders. They sit together not to argue but to understand. They listen to experts talk about energy, jobs and the future, which is what you are talking about. They hear about benefits and the stability and the low emissions and the long-term economic boost. But they also know that no technology is perfect and no project is risk-free. Someone stands up, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a fisherman, maybe it's a young apprentice, and asks a question everyone has quietly held in the back of their mind. If something did go wrong with a project like this, what would it mean for our region's environment, industries and our community? Not out of fear, but out of respect, because it's the right question and a responsible question, and it's a community-minded question. And it's that kind of question that deserves a clear, honest answer. And it's a question I would like to pose to you today.
Okay, thank you for that. I guess if we're going to confront our anxieties, we have to try to do that in as fair-minded and an analytical way as we can. I suffer from the problem of being an engineer. And engineers, unfortunately, exist in a world of atoms up. But that doesn't necessarily address, I guess, significant numbers of people in the community who exist on anxieties, and they are not necessarily going to confront them the way we are. That's the purpose, I guess, of education and discussion about these sources of energy. If you look at the great growing areas of France, the south of France, they've got 58 nuclear power plants in France, 63 gigawatts. They've never had an issue. 100 nuclear power plants sitting in the United States, with the exception of a minor meltdown, a partial meltdown at 3 Mile Island, which had no impact on anybody. I think we would need to look at glass half full as opposed to a glass half empty. Fukushima did not harm anybody. 3 Mile Island did not harm anybody. Where do we get our information from when we develop these anxieties? You know, we need to look at both sides of the argument, and I'm not sure at present that we do that. So I can only appeal to you, because I understand the subtext of what you're asking me there, and it only comes as a result of the education. I've been to MIT in Boston, and I've been presented with the demographics of community groups throughout the United States where they have had nuclear for many decades. And I can tell you, they're not that different to Australia. The same anxieties exist in different parts. On the other hand, if you go to Poland, currently they're about 70% in favour. You go to Finland, they're up very high. And so different parts of the world are more accepting. It depends on information, education. So all I can do is go into community education, but I don't have a magic bullet to existential anxieties. That's for the individual to confront their fears. They confront their fears every day when they get on a jet airliner. Okay, they accept the value proposition of I might die in this jet aircraft. Far higher chance of dying in a jet aircraft than ever having an issue with a nuclear power plant. They get in a motor car every day. Vastly higher chances of coming into grief than living in a nuclear power plant. I go to Darlington, nuclear power plant in the United States. There are people there living within 600 metres of the plant. They've built their houses there. That's how accepting they are. So you've really got to look at it on a case-by-case basis and confront your anxieties.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you for your presentation today. Thank
Yep.
you, councillors, for your questions. We might get back onto the rest of the agenda, but thank you for attending today, and thank you so much for sharing your presentation with us this morning.
Happy to move
thank you
that
for
the
your
presentation be received, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Moved Councillor Churchill, seconded Councillor Wagner. All in favour? Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Righto. We might move on to the next item on the agenda, councillors, which is G 4.1, which is contract and expenditure approval for the tender of 107-25, construction of the Boyne Tenham Aquatic Centre. I've already got someone, but anyway. And I moved, sorry? Yes, I'll go to this. I've got the Acting General Manager of Finance, Governance and Risk, Tanya Wally, and Councillor Patrick has a conflict as well.
For me, I just have
You
to
can
read
find it
the
out.
systems.
Actually,
Yeah.
fine.
Oh, okay, right, fine. Thank you.
Where is Tanya? Oh, there's Tanya.
Sorry, we're just waiting for officers today.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Tanya. I can also acknowledge the General Manager of Assets and Environment, Mark Francis, and if you could introduce the rest of your team for me, that would be fantastic.
Will do. Good morning, councillors. I'm joined today by project sponsor Mark, as you've mentioned. Also have Sarah Barlow, Senior Contracts Officer, and Project Manager David Morris. This morning I'm pleased to present with Mark the tender award for the Boyne Tanham Aquatic Centre. The works include construction of a new aquatic centre inclusive of site clearance, all associated infrastructure, civil works, roadworks, 50-metre pool with plant room, change rooms, kiosk, children's play area and landscaping, along with associated environmental works. The project will also include new road and footpath connections. Following a rigorous and transparent and fully compliant procurement process supported by an independent probity advisor, today the officer's recommendation is that you resolve to award the contract for construction of the Boyne Tanham Aquatic Centre to Painters Proprietary Limited with an expenditure of $29.7 million excluding GST. I'll hand over to Mark, who will take you a little bit more through the project.
Thank you, Tanya. Good morning, councillors. Should you support that recommendation, it also serves as your final investment decision to move from design into delivery under our investment decision framework. This project has over the last 8 years matured from a notice of motion through community consultation, site selection, new site selection, development approvals, concept through to detailed design, while responding and being revised to ensure an asset that contributes to the community's well-being and the region's livability in the most cost-effective way. The project itself has been a real cross-business collaboration. I'd like to commend the sponsorship of Carly Quinn, our General Manager of People and Strategy, and also commend Erickson Noakes, our Strategic Project Specialist in particular, for leading most of the project through the height of the uncertainty of early concepts and site selection, navigating planning and regulatory approvals, as well as keeping key community stakeholders updated to the point where the tender was able to go to market. As I said, we're also joined by David Morris, our project manager, who's done a power of work managing our various consultants, architects and planners, revising the designs and putting together the tender package. And Sarah and the contracts team have run a really brilliant tender process, which has been commended by our probity advisors. The recommended offer does represent the best overall value when balancing price, technical capability, delivery risk and whole-of-life considerations. We're happy to take questions.
Thank you. I would like to move the motion from the chair, and then I have both Councillor Muscat and Councillor Churchill very keen to second it, but I'll go to Councillor Churchill to speak first.
Thanks, Mayor Matt. I'm happy to second the motion, and I'd like to speak to it, but are you wanting to speak to it first, or you allow me?
You speak away.
Okay, thank you for that. This is just another visionary project for the future, and it's for the future not only for Boyne Tanham but our entire region. It has been a long time coming, as you've clearly indicated, and I also acknowledge the efforts of the officers that have been doing a lot of work behind the scenes. And when I say it's been a long time coming, we've arrived, and now's the day that we need to make the decision for the future. And as I indicated previously, none of us will live forever, but this project can live on forever as a legacy. And I'd like to acknowledge not only this council today, but the previous council and the previous council who were endeavouring to ensure that this community-based project was well and truly not only on our agenda but our community's agenda. Your report today clearly articulates that the people had spoken, 95% be it in favour. There's a huge amount of benefits that will come from this, not only just from the recreational and the training and the competitiveness, and I sit on the Gladstone Sports District Foundation Trust, and hopefully there can be more money that can be attributed to this project if my colleagues are keen to support the officer's recommendation. I'd also like to acknowledge Mayor Matt's efforts in the past, but also at the same time acknowledging that the Australian government's $15 million contribution to the project is quite significant, and we must not give that $15 million back. The time's arrived, and I'll say I appreciate that many residents and ratepayers and their strong advocacy and support for the project has been much needed, and that's clearly articulated in the report as a community asset as an important community asset. Personalise it, I was in favour of the project as the previous councillors were. I've continued to be in favour of the project, and I strongly supported past Councillor Khan's notice of motion to acknowledge his efforts. My position has not changed. So the whole process, and it's not a negative, unfortunately, has had its challenges, and we recognise that. And it's not probably been as streamlined as we would have expected. But as I just said there before, we are now so close, we're on the starting blocks. And now is the time to make this exciting project become a reality for this generation, the next generation, and the generations after that as well. So happy to second your motion, Mayor Matt. Thank you.
Thank
Natalia.
you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to try not to say the same things as Councillor Churchill just said, but from, I guess, just a quick reflection, and 100% support the project, and I hope everyone else does. This is that key stage in the investment decision framework process in which we will not be able to go backwards. So, as Councillor Churchill said, that was 2016 when former Councillor Khan Goodluck moved that notice of motion, and I wasn't here because I didn't get elected until 2018. But this is one of those projects that I have, I guess, apart from that difference at the beginning, I've been part of the process the whole time. So there's not that many, apart from the business as usual stuff, there's not many times that we do projects this significant. So I've seen it gone through. I've seen how officers have worked through the processes, how we mature through doing different things. This is probably one of those first ones that have gone 100% through the investment decision framework process that we established back then, back in 2018, around that time. And the way in which we pivoted and changed, and when then our mayor was able to secure the investment of $15 million, and how our procurement team's gone about it, and how our project team and Carly's team and Ericsson, and it might have not always been perfect, but it was always done as professional as we could with the tools and the resources and the information we had at the time. So I'm very excited to have us all support the next stages of this, and seeing some movement there in our new site, and start to see that construction happening, because I know it's going to make a lot of people happy, and I'm very comfortable with the information that we were given in the report. We understand ongoing cost. We understand the life of the asset investment that we need to make. And I really thank the officers for having given us all this information so we can make this. I'm very confident and comfortable in supporting it. So, and I can only say thank you to you guys for doing that. So thank you.
Yeah, Councillor McClintock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Having not been here for the whole process and coming in near the end, I think it probably was a little bit more of a wrestle in my mind, this project, even from the early days of trying to justify it. I mean, it costs a lot to put pools in. That's the real truth of it. And it's not for a lack of desire to want to put infrastructure in or want to do these projects for our community, but definitely trying to think of that bigger picture and what it looked like for the whole of community to spend this sort of money into the long term. It's not just about the benefits and the incredible benefits that we have for community in the years ahead, but the costs as well that we've really got to carefully consider. And watching some of those things as life happens and world changes happen, get more and more expensive along the way. I know it's only going to get more expensive to do it into the years ahead, was something in the back of my head. But ironically, the thing that probably I struggled with the most was the thing that actually made it probably get over the line for me internally was how many opportunities there are for swimming in a coastal community, and there's beaches everywhere, and there's backyard pools, there's all sorts of places. But that also, then I realised, creates a lot of opportunity for water safety and the need for that public space and places to run those services. My family, and I know other members of the community, have had, unfortunately, some experiences when water safety isn't something that is top of mind as it should be in children. And so it's something I'm pretty passionate about, and making sure that there are spaces and opportunities for our young people, particularly in that part of the region, to have access to that type of training that I know happens in these facilities. And I hope that the distance of travelling to one of the many good swimming places in the Gladstone city wouldn't be a hurdle now, and that there would be opportunity into the future ahead for those sort of programs to happen and exist in region out there, and young people may just save their lives. So I am in support of it. I think it's, unfortunately, these things are very expensive, and that was certainly a wrestle internally, but thank you for all of the incredible work that's gone into it, and also for those of us who weren't along the journey, a lot of information and background information and understanding and unpacking and answering probably our dumb questions along the way as well. So thank you very much. Really appreciate the report.
Thank you, Councillor McClintock. Councillor Davis?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I think Councillor McClintock's covered everything I wanted to say as well. But there was one thing. Look, I know not everyone is supportive of the pool. I mean, there is a majority, but is there anything we can do to give confidence to the community for the land that we have bought? I'm not sure if we can sort of go into that, like for the balance of the land, I suppose, to try and recoup some money. Is there anything we can share with the community about the block and the balance of the land to recoup some costs?
It's certainly something that the boardroom have indicated that they would like to see fulfilled. It was a strategic purchase. A third of the purchase is capitalised into this project, so 2/3 of that purchase still remains to be to realise value for the community. So it's certainly something that we will be working on, and we believe that the construction of the pool next door will only increase its value.
Thank you.
Great question, Councillor Davis. Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
She stole my question.
Happens.
That's okay, but yeah, there is 2/3 of that site remain, and yes, it will increase substantially with the development of the pool. Also, with the civil works on the pool, you could probably enhance the levels of that block and make it more valuable again. And I suppose the elephant in the room really is that, okay, can we really afford this thing? And I think clearly the answer is yes, we can, because we do have that value there. We do have a strong consolidated revenue that we can draw on, and we can also mitigate the cost with the sale of the remaining part of the land. We just want to give that comfort to the community at large, that there will be a slight impact on us, but it won't be that great. And we've seen the figures in the 10-year financial plan that's been included into that, and there is room for it in there with very little impact to the community. So we'd just like to give some comfort to the community that, yes, we can afford this, and the impact on you will be negligible, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Councillor Holzheimer.
I really feel like Councillor McClintock captured a lot of what I was thinking as somebody who hasn't been on the journey as long as other people have, who really had to weigh up the cost of this project and the benefit. And I constantly came back to that framework of sometimes what we actually and how we add value within community for livability, for those sorts of things. The price is never going to fit, and it's never really going to balance out as well. And it's not a money-making opportunity as well. This is one of those things that's going to cost us money to deliver, but it's that community benefit as well. So I'm very happy to support it. Really have learnt a lot on the journey of when we've gone backwards and forwards with our cultural find on our original land, then the purchasing of the new land, the review of our plan as well and what it will look like, and the de-scoping of some parts of it to make it more financially viable and a better financial decision for the community as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wagner.
Yeah, look, I just wanted to say, look, everyone has said everything, but look, thank you to everyone who has been involved. I've been here now 2 years, and there's been a lot of, I suppose, curveballs in the process, and everyone has really managed that well. One thing, though, when we're looking at the financial side of this, what would we expect this will cost to operate annually? Sorry, I must have missed that.
Yeah, we have included the
Page 10.
25-year life cycle costs in the report.
Yep. Just for our residents.
Page 10.
That's up on the screen now, page 10 of 40. The whole of life costs.
So including maintenance, life cycle replacement of component assets and the operational costs, we're estimating around about 1.5 million per year.
1.5 million. Excellent. And how would that compare with the pool, the Gladstone pool?
So the current costs of operating, I think, are in the region of between 700 to 1 million, 700,000 to 1 million. We are aware of maintenance challenges there, so those are not included in those costs. So there are additional costs which can't come to mind. I can certainly take that on notice and provide that to you, though.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you very much. And look, thanks to everyone for the work. It's great to see that we're at this point. Excellent.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Before I put the motion, actually no, I'll put the motion, then I'll say something. I've moved it, Councillor Churchill has seconded, the Deputy Mayor also volunteered to second. Put the motion, all in favour? Those against? I'd like to call the division. Those in favour? I wanted recorded that the motion was unanimous. Thank you. And before we move on to the next item on the agenda, I'd like to take an opportunity to thank two people. Firstly, Khan, good luck for tabling the notice of motion in the first instance and bringing this back on the agenda. And Catherine King, who is the reason we have $15 million, which is just over half the cost of the project. Catherine King was in Tenem and made the announcement there in about 2021, I think it was, a long time ago now. Federal Minister for Infrastructure, Transport and local government as well, and it was fantastic to welcome Catherine to our regions, to Tenem Sands, to the old Tenem School Pool, where she got a chance to meet with locals, swim club and others, and made that $15 million commitment, which today has been part of what is just over half the cost of the tendered price. And now I'd like to move on to the next item on the agenda, and I'll have to invite Councillor Patrick back. Thank you, thank you, Mark, team, Sarah, David, and thank you, Tanya, remaining. Councillor Patrick, is someone getting her for us? Okay. Excellent. Yeah. Thank you. Over to you, Tanya.
Councillors, this report presents the tender award for the construction of tender 2326 Harbour Arbour Construction. I'm joined by project sponsor Carly Quinn, General Manager of People and Strategy, Project Manager Zach Smith and Contracts Officer Tracy Christensen. Following a comprehensive procurement process, also supported by an independent probity advisor, the officer's recommendation is to award the contract for the construction of tender 2326 to McCosker Contracting Proprietary Limited with an anticipated expenditure of $12,617,184.10 plus GST. Carly will provide some more context to the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya, and good morning, councillors. So the Harbour Arbour project is about renewing essential underground infrastructure along Gundoon Street that's reached its end of life. While the works may look like a footpath upgrade on the surface, the majority of the investment is focused underground. Some of the water, stormwater and sewerage infrastructure in this area is more than 50 years old and now needs to be replaced to ensure reliable services, reduce the risk of unexpected disruptions and better support surrounding businesses into the future. This infrastructure renewal work is work that we needed to undertake regardless. A few years ago, Council made a deliberate decision to align this necessary infrastructure replacement with the Harbour Arbour concept, with a clear principle that any significant streetscape or beautification works would only proceed if external funding could be secured. And that principle has guided the project from the outset. Now the time has come to replace the infrastructure and we have successfully secured $5.2 million of federal government funding to support placemaking and streetscape improvements. This means enhancements such as improved footpaths, lighting and landscaping are being delivered through a Commonwealth partnership and not funded by the ratepayer. Council's worked closely with the Gladstone Ports Corporation during the design phase to ensure the upgrade aligns with the future East Shores development and provides a seamless connected experience for both residents and visitors. The shared goal is to strengthen the connection between the waterfront precinct and our City Heart businesses and traders. A communications and stakeholder engagement plans in place and Council's already commenced direct engagement with businesses, property owners and other stakeholders who will be impacted by the construction. This will continue throughout the project to ensure people are informed about timing impacts and what to expect. By coordinating our essential infrastructure renewal with externally funded streetscape improvements, we can future-proof services while also improving the connection between the foreshore and our City Heart and delivering long-term benefits for the community.
Thank you. I have a question from the Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is another of those projects that I have been involved since the beginning. It's a great day today. So I think some of the things I was going to just ensure that we communicated, Carly, you already said it, like the fact that that's an end-of-life infrastructure needs that we have. I was reading earlier and the infrastructure there is, about 4 or 5 years older than me. So, well, not that, yeah, I'll be 50 this year, so say 4 years or something. And yeah, we definitely need to do something, and that's what it's best asset management. So it is great to see that we're doing this together. I know it's been in our strategic priorities for a while. We met a few times. We sort of demoted the project in the priority list because we had other things, but I always advocated for that to stay in the top fives. And I'm very happy to see it now happening. So, and obviously, thank you again to the Australian government for the contribution. So I'd love to move it if that's okay, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, happy for you to move. I've got a couple of councillors who want to speak. Councillor Patrick, you happy to second? Yes, and then Councillor Davis has a question.
Thank you.
And then Councillor Churchill as well.
And thank you again to the officers. That's the same comment as I had about the pool. So it's been wonderful working through the project with you all. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and yeah, I was happy to second Councillor Patrick.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm excited about this project, and it's not that it's great to have the opportunity because we have to do the infrastructure, but that's going to be a benefit that we can do. And I'm excited because, like, growing up in the region and seeing what the CBD used to be, so I really am excited to see that we be able to attract people back into the CBD and for tourism as well in Gladstone region. So thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Matt. Probably for a statement and then question. This is council's core business. This is about making sure that we are managing our assets. And you mentioned there before, and it's in the report there, but 50 years, I'm surprised we've got 50 years, but there's been a lot of band-aids put on it over a period of time as well. So the time arrives at some stage where replacement is a priority. But I wanted, through you, Tanya, and be it Carly, I want to thank you to the officers who took the time to do the street walk and to keep the business traders and the residents, be it everybody that's been involved along that particular corridor, to keep them informed. Keep them informed and keep them understanding and satisfied about what was going to happen and the likelihood of when it might happen, because the last thing we needed to do was create a disruption for any of those business traders in that sector. So I thank you for what you've been doing, and we've got some great feedback on that. The other part also is that whatever may flow out of this now also, and Councillor Wagner and I were away at a summit last week, which is the National Affordable Housing Summit, and we met with a particular well-known a developer and a major ratepayer for our region, who I have no doubts will, and others, will generally trigger the effort now to create more development in Gundoon Street. I've got no doubts that that's going to occur in the very near future. My question appropriately is the next stage and the next stage, be it, are we connecting with the Gladstone Ports Corporation on their success story that they've done with the East Shores to make sure that there is a continuation either of the theme or the enhancement of the attraction of that destination within the city? Rather than be in conflict or not be in conflict, it'd be nice to know that we can work together in going forward.
Yes, yep, thank you for the question, Councillor Churchill. We've had strong collaboration with the port right the way through the project, from concept design through detailed design and continuing now, to ensure that both projects complement each other, connect, but not just for the visitors, not just for our residents, but for our visitors as well to the region.
That's terrific to hear. Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Wagner.
Yeah, just a quick one. Look, thank you for all the work that's been done, and I think getting the funding for that infrastructure component is great. As a journalist here many years ago, and I think I finished in around 2005 in my role there, the infrastructure under the pavement was already at its lifespan then. So it is great to see 20 years later, because I remember reporting on that here we are, and we're going to put these two projects together. And I do like the idea that it will trigger. I suppose first, initially, my reaction was like, what the hell? Because we're spending all this money on a footpath, and because we will lose a couple of car parks, I understand, and what have you, but hopefully there's some other measures that we can do to offset that. But it would be good to have a pavement that was more accessible to people with disabilities, that doesn't have uneven edges. It is on a hill, there are some challenges with it, but I think hopefully this is the impetus to actually extend this hopefully further through the CBD and make some more of a connected community in that area, right through to our shopping centre and beyond Tank Street, hopefully and further. Mm-hmm. So thank you to everyone who's done the work, and also for our funding partner, because without that this wouldn't be going ahead. It should hopefully revitalise the CBD. And speaking to the developer, I suppose it just reinforced, like going, yeah, this is a great thing, because it may just get some of those major development projects in the CBD to happen, and hopefully that will help revitalise our CBD. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wagner. Any further questions, councillors? Oh, sorry, Councillor Holzheimer.
More of a statement than anything else, just to really highlight how great it is that we've actually been able to recommend a tender for a local supplier like McCosker's as well, and support local business through this, and the quality of the application that we received to make them the recommended tender as well. So well done to the team at McCosker's.
Yeah. No further comments, councillors? Questions? No? All right, we have a mover in the Deputy Mayor and a seconder in Councillor Patrick. I put the motion. All in favour? Motion's carried. Thank you. We will now break for morning tea, but before we do, I will be leaving shortly after to attend the Rio Tinto facility with Sumitomo Corporation as a meeting with the representatives of Sumitomo, of course, building their hydrogen facility at Rio Tinto Yarwun, which is almost in operation, or potentially is already in operation, but I'm sure we'll have more information when they come back, and they will then join us for lunch. So hopefully I can be back shortly, but I'll be on site with Sumitomo. I'm very excited to see our hydrogen project happening in Gladstone, operational, and injecting hydrogen into the calcination process at Rio Tinto and decarbonising their operations in what is a global first, and potentially will be replicated right across the world when this project is proven their technology. I will leave it there for now, and I'll then hand over to the Deputy Mayor if I'm not back in time, and then we'll bring Sumitomo back to meet with all councillors after that, and we'll now break for morning tea. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you and welcome back. Thanks, Josh. Next in our agenda, we have more officers' reports. And next item is 4.3, expenditure approval, Telstra mobile phones contract for 3 years renewal. We have Acting General Manager, Finance, Governance and Risk, Tanya. And if you want to introduce your colleagues, that'd be wonderful. Thank you. And to you.
Thank you, Councillor Muscat. Good morning again, councillors. I have with me Kylie Ware, Council's ICT specialist, to seek your approval for expenditure of about $1,063,000 to renew Council's agreement with Telstra Limited for mobile services. Council uses mobility services voice and data across a range of devices, including Council-issued mobile phones, tablets, selected laptops and field-based operational devices that support, monitor and manage remote sites and systems. Council strives to identify cost-saving opportunities across its 1,141 mobility plans and uses standardised services to reduce overheads and streamline support. Data pooling minimises charges and improves utilisation of shared data. The mobile services contract is due to expire in March 2026, and by Council authorising this expenditure, officers will be able to secure a new agreement before an anticipated price increase due to take effect in April 2026. Telstra is a specialised supplier for telecommunication infrastructure. The expenditure approval is sought as the contract is above the Chief Executive Officer's delegation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Any questions, comments? Councillor Wagner is happy to move. Second by Councillor Holzheimer. Get your next, Councillor Simon. No questions, no comments. Can I see who's in favour? That looks pretty good. Thank you very much. That's been carried. Sorry. We could try asking you a question, but thank you. Next in the agenda is 4.4, waiver of waste disposal fees. Tanya again, thank you. And Sian, hello.
Councillors, I have Sian, Manager of Revenue Services, here with me. This report seeks a resolution from Council that delegates authority to the CEO to waive waste disposal fees and charges in response to disaster or an interruption to service. The recent flooding experienced by the region resulted in customers being unable to receive or have access to waste services. Currently, a decision to waive waste disposal fees must be made by Council resolution. It is proposed that a delegation be put in place to allow the CEO to waive waste disposal fees and charges in response to a disaster or interruption to service to allow for timely decisions and communication to the public. The need for the CEO's delegation was demonstrated by the recent storm activity. The collection disrupted curbside waste collection services with road closures preventing access to normal collection routes. On occasions in the past, decisions to waive fees and charges following disaster events have been retrospectively endorsed by Council. However, this does not reflect good governance for Council or officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. That's great. Any questions? I believe Councillor Churchill would like to move this.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chair, Madam Chair. Just a question first. No, I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation that we delegate it to the CEO to waive waste disposal fees and charges in response to a disaster or an interruption to service. And I would imagine that, so my question is, that's all encompassing when we talk about waste. All encompassing, and then trying to get an understanding, are we just talking residents, or are we talking business traders, are we talking commercial? And I also would like to get a point of clarification, because from my understanding, in the height of a disaster, as part of and chairing part of the recovery committee for, be it for infrastructure, to a degree where it's services, trying to get a clarification that I I was of the belief that the chair of the LDMG had that capacity to make that decision fairly promptly in relation to green waste at a time of a disaster. So maybe to answer the question first, is it all waste?
Yes, so this is a broad delegation and it applies to all waste. Obviously, it would be applied under careful consideration and in consultation with councillors, but it's to address any risks of public health and safety related to waste that needs to be removed.
Yeah, just trying to understanding because don't want to place too much onus of responsibility on our own people who are at the transfer station to determine appropriately, is it disaster-related waste or it has been a stockpiling of waste of concrete, metal and whatever the case might be, opportunistic to remove it during that period of time.
Councillor Churchill, it's my understanding that we already do need to go through those processes in any case when we're dealing with that. But it's not proposed at all for this delegation to be put down any further than the Chief Executive Officer. This would remain.
Okay then. Okay, I understand. And everybody knows my opinion on green waste. It should be free all year round. But having said that, just to get that point of clarification in relation to the decision that should be made instantaneously at the height of a disaster.
Thank you, Councillor Churchill. The decision to waive fees rests with Council, because they're Council services. There are circumstances in disaster where we may be eligible to access funding that can offset some of those costs, and those processes are worked through. But no, it wouldn't be, the Chair of the LDMG would not have the authority to waive those charges under this delegation. It's something that I could do in consultation with councillors, but no, that's not been the past practice. We have made decisions, as the paper says previously, where we've made a decision, I've made a decision to do something and then come back to council for resolution. But there are some intricacies around the funding that may be available and steps we have to take to be able to access that, and in some cases we can't access that funding. So it's a decision of the cost to council to waive those fees.
And then obviously the safety of not only of our people in the transfer stations, but the safety generally of people not wanting to, at the height of the disaster, is the last thing we want is for that to be happening.
Yes, and as Tanya said, I think our people are well practiced in managing those situations when they occur. This is just a step about making the decision of when to waiver those. But yeah, you raise important points. Thank you.
Okay, you know, I'm satisfied with that, but I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Churchill. Can I have a second there? Councillor McClintock. And Councillor Holzheimer has a question, and then Councillor Cameron.
My question was probably more for the CEO. At what point in the disaster recovery or disaster process would that decision typically be made as well? And I'm just wanting to understand, I suppose, how you decide to make that decision.
My response would be it depends and it varies. The critical piece of information we need first is what is the impact, and and some of the processes we're going through now about asking people to estimate the volumes of waste, because it is challenging, particularly at transfer stations. If we're accepting this waste, we have very limited facilities that can fill up pretty quickly. So the key is often to find out what the volumes are that we're likely to anticipate, and then we put the processes in place to accommodate that as best we can. So it might be quickly, or it might be after a little while once we get a better understanding of the damage and the impacts that's had on community.
Thank you, Councillor Holzheimer. Councillor Cameron?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. What's the time frame for the waiving of fees, or do you need to make another resolution to re-engage the fees?
I don't think this recommendation puts that type of restriction on, but if you would like to put a restriction on, the circumstances may vary. Just noting as well, this recommendation talks about an interruption to service as well as a disaster, so that could look quite different depending on the circumstances. Are you looking for some guardrails around the period of time. Normally, with a disaster, so we would say, up until this date, people in these localities can, deliver their waste for free. That's normally, we put some dates around it, but it would sort of depend on the circumstances. I don't know if I'm helping or making that more confusing.
The delegation has definitely designed, Councillor Cameron, to provide flexibility to cover those broad range of services, and it may be a week, it may be 3 days, it may be 2.
Who makes that call?
Under this recommendation, it would be
You make that
myself,
call.
but as the report says, I would do it in consultation with councillors. So it would mean that we wouldn't have to have a formal resolution, that could be canvassed with you, and perhaps some of Councillor Holzheimer's points too might be coming through a recovery subcommittee as well, that advice and intelligence
Okay,
as well.
happy with that, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Sorry, I have a few councillors that want to speak. Councillor McClintock, then Councillor Wagner, and then Councillor Patrick. I thought you wanted to speak when you seconded the motion, so yeah.
That's okay. Just want to jump the gun. My question was, do we get at times the DRFA funding that would offset the cost of this waste? And what does that look like as far as timing? Is that when that gets implemented? How does that look? What is that interaction with the way that we do waste when it comes to disasters is probably my question.
Mark may want to jump in if he likes, but the first step is identifying the impact, which is the process we're going through at the moment to understand what's happened, and then when we get activated for access to those types of funding. But as we're doing now with a lot of the work we're doing, we have cost work codes, I'll get the terminology wrong, that the work we're doing as part of the clean-up, we can allocate the work there, and then when the arrangements fall into place, we can claim against those. But Mark may want to clarify that for us.
Yep, so with respect to recovery of costs, there's some very specific criteria we've got to meet through Queensland Reconstruction Authority, and that generally is after event. The specific circumstance here was actually an interruption of service, which could have happened and actually happened before there was any disaster. All we had was actually the inability to conduct our service for which people had already paid their rates.
Yep.
So, we had so it's just recognising that, so we wouldn't be able to cover essentially normal red bin services because we recover more than 50% of the cost of that service by the rate.
Yep.
But if I had specific flood waste and had those impacts after the event, I then may be able to get disaster recovery funding, and that's the pieces that we're working through with our recovery groups now in terms of getting that and engaging with QRA, engaging with the community and all of our other agencies to try and get that money back.
No, I appreciate that.
I appreciate we've tried to thread the needle here and make it quite broad, but also recognising that, and because when we were crafting this, it was almost recognising there is many circumstances that could interrupt a service, and it wouldn't be reasonable for our community to essentially go pay a fee at the transfer station to dump a red bin when essentially for no fault of their own, that red bin service was unable to be provided.
No, that's great. And I guess I just wanted a little bit of clarity, even for community, as far as whether we are not paying for it and we just get it automatically given back and how that all interacts with it. But there is a lot of moving parts to that whole process. Probably just finally, it's never been free grain waste. It's always been paid for, just in a different way. We're just talking about the cover of costs. Anyway.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McClintock. Councillor Wagner?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just the latest status with our waste transfer stations around the region, because we did have closures. Are they all up and running again now? They are?
Yes, they are, Councillor.
Excellent. And with those two, the process, can people deliver that free at the moment, or where are we up
Not
to that?
currently, I don't believe. We're still in the process of working through recovery operations.
Right, so we are making some consideration of.
Yeah, again, it's that the more community can provide information about the impacts, it's the damage assessments are still being undertaken as far as I'm aware, so understanding what the impacts are to understand then what the requirements might be for waste.
And just one other thing, when people do take it there, have we looked at how they may dispose it in a safe manner?
Yeah, these are the things, and this is where the more information we have from the community, how important it is. We have I'll get the terminology wrong, flexi skip bin things, flexi bins. We have different ways of collecting waste, and when we know the volumes, then that helps us to plan so that we minimise, make that easy for customers, and we can also transfer it where we need to as well.
It'd be great to not see people lifting unreasonably. But thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, great questions. Councillor Patrick?
Councillor McClintock actually asked the question firstly that I was going to ask, so thank you for getting that clarification. But then just on the back of Councillor Wagner's question is, with a disaster, is it across the entire region? That, like, I know that our southern part has been in disaster. But that doesn't stop the rest of the region being impacted as well. So just what are the definitions, I suppose, of that?
Again, I'm probably, sorry if I'm being repetitive, but it really comes back to the damage assessments, like to understand, you know, we don't have that information yet. Were people's homes impacted? The large impact we're seeing currently is that there were roads cut off and the fences down and those sorts of things. So we don't have a clear idea at the moment of impacts to structures and properties to understand what that impact might be. We're hearing of where power was out and white goods and those sorts of waste. So until we get a better handle on that, it's very difficult. And we have in the past, we tailor our response to what the needs are. And we have previously in some disasters in the southern region, we have sent big trucks down to collect steel or to collect timber or to collect different sorts of waste. So it really is important that we understand what is the waste, what types of waste they are, and then how we can best dispose of them. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's okay, Lisa. Yeah. So on the back of that, how is, and I think we have been distributing some comms on how the best way is for people to report that. But can you reiterate that for us to our residents as well?
Certainly, the Region Watch dashboard is the place to go. There are some short surveys there that will help us to collect that information that will help unlock funding opportunities for impacted people within our region, and that's where all your up-to-date information on recovery is. So we'd encourage people to go to Region Watch.
Awesome, thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Councillor Patrick. Councillor Wagner, you have another question?
Yes, sorry. Jockeying for position. Just on the back of what Councillor Patrick said too, so for the, we're talking about the Region Watch and the surveys, and I do encourage everyone on there because that's the best way of us trying to secure funding to support everyone. But if they have specific issues, would they just go through to info@Gladstone? Like, if they've got a specific request that relates to them?
I guess my answer would be if it's related to the weather impacts, then it'd be great to go through Region Watch. But if there is something for council that's part of our normal business, then everyone's welcome to go through info. We'll gather that information.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay, great. No more questions or comments. I have a mover in Councillor Churchill, second Councillor McClintock. We all in favour? That's great. Thank you very much. That's been carried. And we move to the next item in our agenda. Yes, good luck, our CEO. Next item is 4.5, our monthly financial report for the period ending February 28. And we have Tanya again, and you please introduce your colleagues in... and with you.
Thank you, Councillor Moscow. I have Jess Rosso, our Financial Controller, here with me for the monthly financial report. The monthly financial report reflects financial statements as at the 28th of February 2026. The financial statements demonstrate a strong financial position with strong cash balances of $184.9 million. Net assets marginally increased, reflecting capitalisation of work in progress carried forward from last financial year, which will be recognised as property, plant and equipment during 2025 to 26. $162.3 million in operating revenue has been collected so far, including income from rates and the recently issued water notices. Revenue equates to 60.78% of forecast. Capital revenue is currently sitting at 23.4 million, or 47.4% of forecast, and this position is expected to improve as we get closer to the end of the financial year, as grant revenue is recognised in line with project milestones. Interest revenue remains positive, with 5.6 million, or 82% of forecast received to date. This income can be attributed to Council's high cash balances and favourable interest rate conditions, which is looking good for the next period. In terms of expenditure, it remains consistent with our Q1 forecast position. Key drivers of expenditure include employee benefits, slightly above forecast assumptions due to a lower than forecast vacancy rate. Consultant expenditure remains below forecast, but will likely increase towards the remainder of the year as delivery increases. Contractor expenditure is focused on core service delivery and is at 63%, tracking in line with forecast. Staff associated expenses are tracking below forecast, primarily due to the timing of training activities. And financer costs appear high compared to budget, but this is due to a timing difference in loan payments. Council's loan payments are made monthly, and Gladstone Airport Corporation's payments to Council are made quarterly, so there is a temporary variance. Capital expenditure sits at 49 million, or 51% of forecast. And councillors, it would be no surprise that we've highlighted the increasing cost of fuel and the potential for disruptions in fuel supply in the report as an emerging risk. Council's 25-26 budget included a provision, 25-26 budget actuals had $2.4 million expense on fuel. So a shift in fuel will have an impact on Council's budget. It's anticipated that increases in fuel will also carry through to Council from the broader supply chain costs. Council has not experienced any supply issues to date, though we'll continue to monitor the situation and consider financial and operational impacts as they arise. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. I think I have Councillor Leanne first and then Councillor Churchill. Thank you. Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on the back of what we were just talking about, what type of modelling will you be using going forward? I know that it's good to keep an eye on it. Obviously, we need to be across that, but what type of modelling would we use for something like this?
We only have a few months left in this forecast, so we're sort of in a bit uncertain times. And in terms of modelling for this immediate period, there's not a lot we can do, though we'll look at is there ways we can address those additional costs by changing the way we do things operationally. In terms of the next year's budget, which we're sort of moving into building, there will have to be some modelling going into that. But it is uncertain times, and we can only work with what we've got.
Yeah. And we're also predicted, from what I've been hearing in the media, some interest rate rises as well. So that will need to be mitigated as well. So, so just obviously you guys are across that, but I just thought, I would ask the question if there is a particular type of modelling that we can use or not. So
and QTC will provide, Queensland Treasury Corporation will provide support in that. And
excellent. That's probably what I was asked. After was, is there some type of modelling that we're kind of abiding by, or
there's no shortage at the moment of economic updates and webinars flying around. So I've got Sarge, my management accounting specialist, dialing into each and every one to try and figure out who has the crystal ball and can tell us what's coming. But we'll gather as much evidence as we can on what we think is going to occur, and then when we get together to have budget discussions, we'll highlight where we think the risk still exists, and we'll be able to make some decisions at that point.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Jess. I suppose it's the same question, different year in the circumstances when we are dealing with the wrath of the disaster the flooding through the region. So my question appropriately is now that, be it property and our people and our machinery and everything else in relation to the disaster recovery, and maybe it's a question through you to our General Manager, perhaps Mark Francis or the CEO, in relation to our capital works project, is there considerations now for reviewing our capital works? Will there be an impact on our capital works to be able to deliver, depending on the timing of recovery? And thank you, it's a great report, always is a great report, you know, and it gives everybody a great insight on what's happening at that higher level. But I'm very mindful of what's happening out there at the moment with our people and our machinery and everything else actively involved in bringing our region back into order as best as it possibly can until the Queensland Reconstruction Authority steps up as well. Will there be a strong move to review our capital works project for this budget?
The short answer is yes. The longer answer is we continually review the budget to take into account all the different factors that can influence projects. Obviously, no projects are without risk, so we need to continually review the deliverability. As you know, as the chair of the Infrastructure Recovery Committee, we will prioritise the works that we receive, the reports that we receive for the restoration of the roads and the infrastructure that we have. So that will be prioritised, and that may require some other works to be delayed within the programme. So it's an active piece of work that we do. We've also got plans where we had thought our internal teams would be delivering some work. They're now diverted to this. So it's a state of flux, but it's something that we're continually reviewing.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mark. I do appreciate that. So would you be able to speculate, that's maybe not the right word, in a timeline of when that might occur? I know we're collecting and collating and compiling the list of priorities, just that we're well into, albeit we're nearly into April, so that only really gives us a couple of more months as such to be able to deliver the capital works project within the current budget.
So the current forecast for the capital programme is sitting at around about 90% of the adopted budget. So we're estimating or forecasting at the moment that would be achieving 85 million against a 93 million adopted budget.
Okay.
That requires a lot of things to go right. Recalling a previous conversation, we've just, for instance, had advice from the Australian Flexible Pavement Association that bitumen shortages are going to become a potential reality for us to deal with over the next few weeks, along with a 50% increase in cost for bitumen. So that is an opportunity to significantly impact recovery and as well as planned works as well. So all these extraneous factors need to be considered and need to, as I say, a lot of things need to go right for us to achieve even our forecast position, which is 90% of your adopted budget.
Yeah, okay, 85 million out of 93 million is not too bad, really, if we can achieve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Churchill. I had a couple of questions, if they're not. First, I wanted to note that we added the 5-year average to the ratios, which is great. Thank you for doing that. That was a great suggestion, Councillor McClintock. I'm going on to the conversation we just had about capital expenditure and noting on the asset sustainability ratios. So I guess we're still forecasting like a pretty good ratio there, but again, how is that related to the capital expenditure and considering we sort of didn't go over 80 last year? Just a bit of commentary about that.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Your asset sustainability ratio is driven by the expenditure that you have on renewals projects specifically compared to upgrades or to new. It's actually quite unlikely that a council will stay really steady within a range across a period of time. It's cyclical depending on what the balance of projects within the capital budget are. So some years you might have a higher level of expenditure on a new project, something like the aquatic facility in Bointanum will certainly impact that in the years to come. Some years, if you've got a heavy renewals-based program, that's when you'd see some really good results, and we have had years like that where we've well and truly exceeded the limits there for the asset sustainability ratio. So it does go hand in hand with delivery. If you're struggling to deliver your capital program, you may struggle to hit what you're looking for in terms of the asset sustainability ratio, but there is that nuance of what projects you're actually delivering that also needs to come into play.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that was, I guess, is noted as a yellow amber light in there. But no, that's a great explanation. Thank you. And I guess, you know, we have very healthy cash reserves, et cetera, et cetera. So it looks great. Can I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Patrick, a seconder on Councillor Cameron. Are we all in favour? Yes, that's great. Thank you very much. Next item is 4.6, review of procurement policy, and we still have Tanya to present that to us. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, I'm here for the long haul today. Following the annual review of the procurement policy, an amended policy is presented for your consideration. The proposed policy is within Council's risk appetite and establishes the principles that apply to Council's procurement activities, ensuring that the activities are responsible, safe, fair and value for money. The intent of the policy remains the same with only one minor amendment. And I'd just like to flag that the attached summary highlights Council's procurement over the first 2 quarters of this financial year, and I'm pleased to highlight that across $74.9 million spent, there was 64.1% spent on local businesses, with 663 suppliers engaged. Council also engaged 13 First Nation suppliers, equating to a 1.9% spend. The policy is presented for your consideration.
Great. Oh, Councillor Wagner, quick to put her hand up. You're next.
I just have one question. No, I think this is great, but I'm just wondering, looking at the linkages.
You got microphone?
I'm so sorry.
Oh, good.
In the report, I'm just wondering, have we included the legislation or the Empowering Councils regulation from 2025 in this? I just didn't see it in the list.
Yeah. Councillor Wagner, the Empowering Councils bill, that piece of legislation, that's reflected in our corporate standards. So our policy suggests the broad principles for procurement, and then our corporate standard outworks to the rest of the business how we undertake those procurement activities within the legislation. And we're in the process now of just embedding those into current procurement practices.
Okay, so, yeah, I just thought where you actually say where it links, you know, what's been used. I didn't see it in there, I just thought it would have been. But anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
So.
I have a mover in Councillor Davis. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Holzheimer, any? Sorry. I have a mover in Councillor Davis and a seconder in Councillor Holzheimer. Is there any other questions or comments about this? I think it's great. Very much support this, and thank you for bringing us on the process of understanding all this. And it makes it way easier when we have good relationships with our officers and we can ask all the questions that we need to ask. So can I see who's in favour of the officer's recommendation? Looks great. That's been carried, and thank you very much, Tanya. And don't go anywhere because you have one more. And this is 4.7, review of councillor expenses, reimbursement and provision of facilities policy.
This is my last report for today. The Councillor Expenses Reimbursement and Provision of Facilities Policy provides accountability and transparency in the reimbursement of expenses and the provision of facilities provided or incurred by councillors in the conduct of council business. The scope of the policy does not include councillor remuneration, which is provided in accordance with the determination by the Local Government Remuneration Commission. Following consultation with councillors, the proposed policy includes the following amendments. Enhanced commitment to health and safety and introduction of the ability to consider the risk to health and safety of a councillor, such as fatigue management and the ability to perform duties efficiently and safely. And this is to be considered when determining travel modes. Recognition that councillors will incur expenses in relation to the councillor's appointment as council's representative on boards, committees and/or groups. A change to allow the CEO to approve councillor attendance at a conference in Australia. Previously, this was limited to Queensland, and that applies where there is budget and the councillor has attended no more than 3 conferences in the current financial year. Alignment of meal and incidental costs with the Australian Tax Office allowances, and just an administrative amendment of the policy template.
Very good. Comments, questions? Councillor Cameron?
Yeah, just reading through the policy there, it did make mention to use of councillor-supplied vehicles, that you must, or suggested that you nominate an alternate user, either a family member, which we haven't done, and we were told that was not necessary.
That was in the previous policy, I believe. We are not required to collect driver's licences or anything like that.
But should we nominate who we allow to use the car?
That's the position of the policy, but we can just as easily amend that. To confirm, it's not an insurance requirement.
Okay. But it does say we should mention who's going to use it in the policy.
That's how the policy reads, yes.
Yeah. So do we tell the CEO that someone might use our car, a family member?
We do.
Yes, to comply with the policy.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we already filled that out.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I haven't, and I was told it wasn't necessary. My point.
Councillor Cameron, that may have been missed as part of the onboarding for you the second time round.
Could have been home. Okay. Righto, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Holzheimer?
When we were discussing this, I noticed there were conversations about expenses for training, development, that sort of thing as well for councillors, if they weren't going to attend any conferences. How does that fit with that space as well?
I believe for the time being that's been left out of the policy. I don't think there was, from our discussions, a clear alignment on what that policy position was, but we can certainly revisit this policy at any time if there is a strong consensus on what that would look like. At the moment we do have a budget for councillor education and things like that we can accommodate that sort of expenditure within.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have one, and it refers to, if we go to, it's in the first page actually, of the track changes. Well, that's the one I'm looking at. It says at the bottom, all facilities provided to councillors remain the property of council and must be returned to council when a councillor resigns or their term expires. This has been added to it, so does this need to be here? I mean, I'm thinking of sometimes where we might have, I don't know, an old phone or a phone that it will pretty much be thrown away afterwards. Is there any potential that the councillor can purchase that to use it ongoingly, or I guess just if it's going to be discarded or...
So I believe that it was added just to provide some certainty. It was silent on that before, and that's consistent of the way that our staff would hand back their property. We do have asset disposal processes and procedures that we follow as council. If we were going to, we would have to include, two options. We can remove it so that it is again silent on that process, or we could amend it slightly so that it would allow for our councillor to keep the property on fair market value or something like that.
I would love to have that option if that was not going aside from any other policy, obviously, but if that was possible, I don't see why the... Is there any commentary? Anyone has any comments about that, or?
Well, wouldn't it be better perhaps to hand back everything that is the property of the Gladstone Regional Council, and you in your capacity, if that was to be the case, request the ability to be able to acquire and or purchase to the CEO? But
I think
that's just my opinion, because I think that's the intention, was to actually ensure that it was severed completely so that there's no confusion with any particular item, but Madam CEO may have a differing opinion.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Councillor Churchill. I was just thinking along the same lines. I think keeping that line in does not stop us following the procedures that we have in place where a councillor has left in the past and has requested that, and then we've outworked that operationally. But I guess the first intent is they need to be returned, and then we can outwork that request.
Okay. If there's options after that, I'm happy with the way it is. But Councillor Wagner?
Yeah, just a clarification. The last line there says that the property gets returned when a councillor resigns or the term expires. When is it determined that the term expires? So a caretaker period is what I'm, I suppose, getting at.
It's quite explicit in the legislation of when a term ends.
And
so
what's it say?
It's upon the swearing in of the new council from memory, so it goes post the election until...
Just so there's clarity. Okay, excellent, thank you.
Very good. So, yeah, I'm satisfied with that, as long as we can continue another process to, if the councillor decides to, and if it's in the interest of the ratepayers, is fine. Did I get a mover or a seconder for this? Councillor Cameron, Councillor Holzheimer, are we all in favour? Thank you, Tanya. That's been carried. We moving on to...
I am. Thank you, Councillor.
What's the time? To the last item for the councillor. The officers' reports. Volunteer Marine Rescue Run Hill lease. Bride Jensen, Manager Community Partnerships. Libby.
Good morning. Thank you, councillors. This morning I'm joined by Community Leasing Officer Libby Cattermole as we present the lease for Volunteer Marine Rescue Round Hill. Council is trustee of the reserve situated at 539 Captain Cook Drive, 1770. VMR currently leases part of the land from council, with the lease commencing on the 1st of October 2017 and due to expire on the 30th of September 2027. As part of the Queensland Government initiative to strengthen frontline capabilities and improve disaster response across the state, VMR has been transitioning to Maritime Rescue Queensland with a new agency that sits under the Queensland Police Service. Council officers have been liaising with Maritime Rescue Queensland's legal team, who have requested that, given there is only 2 years left remaining on that lease, that the current lease be surrendered and a new lease entered into for a term of 30 years. Officers have no objection to this period under Council's land transaction policy, given the strategic intent and infrastructure investment by Volunteer Marine Rescue. I welcome any questions.
Very good. Councillor Churchill and then Councillor Wagner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Bri. Thank you, Libby. When I read the agenda item, I thought, wow, now we're really getting ahead of the game with our leases. So are we getting ahead of the game? I know we've been playing catch-up, and I think this is quite exciting, but at the same time, or is this aligning with the changeover now with VMR going to QPS, Queensland Police Service, that's triggered it? Because I'm hoping it will be the first rather than the second, but I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation But I'd love to know from the officer's perspective if we're getting ahead of the game on these various leases around the region.
Can I have a second there before you answer the question? Councillor Holzheimer? Yep, so, and then, yes, please answer the question.
Thank you, Councillor. A little of option A, little of option B. So we are definitely getting closer to being ahead of the game. We're not quite there yet, but we've made tremendous improvement. The fact that we're progressing ones like this which haven't reached their expiry yet demonstrates that. Some of the ones that are still outstanding are those trickier ones, we'll say, that require longer outworking. But we've definitely made huge improvement on shortening down those list of expired, leases that are now in a holdover period. I'll get Libby to answer with more specific numbers that she might be able to.
Well, that was going to be
recall
my next
offhand.
question, because appropriately, getting ahead of the game, what have we pushed back to be able to get this one done by the powers to be that are asking for it, at the expense of any of our other good community-based organisations?
No, Councillor, I can assure you it's not a case of necessarily pushing anything back to accommodate this one. It's just the process and the timeframe that it came in and our ability to action it while we're still outworking other lease arrangements. Did you have anything further to add?
Nothing really too different. The amount of leases that I've been working on is still fairly much the same, but because they're all so different, a lot of the times it's really getting the information and the leases signed from the organisations and those ones being returned to us. So while those ones are sitting out there and the clubs are actually looking at them, reviewing them before they come back, this is why we can progress through ones like this one today. We're very conscious that they're all volunteers, so we're not chasing them down to get those documents back, although we do keep in contact with them regularly.
As long as they don't expire. Anyway, yeah, you know the circumstances, but anyway, congratulations, well done.
Very good. Councillor Wagner?
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of questions. I'm just looking at the area of the lease, the existing lease, and obviously the future lease. It's got the bit that juts out over the water. Is there any reason that we give that is part of the lease area? And does that cause any potential risks for us if we want to do something in that area in the future?
So that has been part of their existing lease area and there's a requirement due to the nature of their operations. I'm probably not best placed to answer the specifics of that. I'd probably have to call on our land management officer to talk to that, because you're right, most of the leases that we enter into as community leases are only for land, but this is fairly standard in this sort of instance.
I'm just curious, do we have jurisdiction over that water? Like, I can't make a decision on this when we've had other discussions here about tenure of water. So while the lease is there and we're giving it out, I'm not sure. I'd love to know that we actually have that jurisdiction, and why don't we just do the land part of it? I'm looking where that area comes out. It's adjacent to the wharf, but it's actually got a little bit of a distance away from it too, so I can't see what the actual, I don't know, maybe I'm not seeing it, but I can't see what the benefit of having that is either.
Low water mark, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. I would have thought it was next to the wharf, but I don't know. I don't know. Like, if you're going to put a boat in there.
That's why you're asking the question.
I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something.
Sorry, I believe the image is supposed to represent the jetty, so it's a physical piece of the infrastructure which forms part of the lease area. Council is responsible for everything above the high tide mark. Below that, it's state responsibility.
Well, that's interesting. So if something happens at low tide, it's going to be different than high tide. So how can we still give a lease over it?
No, sorry. So council's responsibility is at the high tide mark, so back from that. Anything beyond that is state responsibility, but I believe the image is is it supposed to represent that jetty?
Right.
So
as part of the lease area.
So the image that's been used is actually what it was with the current lease that they have, just showing you where the location is. As part of our negotiations moving forward to create the new lease, we would actually then double check on boundaries, and actually there's possibility of even increasing their boundary slightly with the intention for them investing in the property and actually probably looking to build a carport or parking facility, a shed. So this is just indicative of where the lease is right now and the area that they actually have been using.
So with this wharf, like, pardon my ignorance, is that used by anyone else currently, or it's just them?
It's exclusively theirs.
Okay. No, that's okay. I was just, I'm not familiar with that particular area. So no, that answers that question. The only thing is transferring it over to the QPS, giving that, I mean, they've been through this, I suppose, change. What happens if there's another change in the future? If we relinquish this now, so it's just a lease at the moment, like I'm just trying to get my head around, what risks to us does it have in the future if there is another change in terms of how they operate?
We would simply be able to do a transfer to whatever new entity that they're operating under.
Okay, all right, excellent, no worries, thank you for that.
Very good. Councillor Holzheimer?
On our trip down south the other day, Councillor McClintock, the Mayor, and I were fortunate enough to actually meet with the team, and they were doing some training upgrades and showed us their facilities, and were very excited about the potential of a new rescue boat and then some extensions as well, so they were able to store equipment and to better provide support to that part of the community. Highly support the 30-year lease. I think it's great to give them that much security and to also take that administrative pressure off us. So thank you.
Very good. So, Councillor McClintock?
Yeah, I just probably onto that is just, does this need to come back if there is an extension of that boundary?
Not if it's, only if it was to be significantly different to what we've presented today.
Rightio. And I think that blue mark heading out into the water there is actually like a rail infrastructure that their boat rolls out on, from what I was looking at the other day when I was there in place.
I'm not overly familiar with the site, but something along those lines, yes.
Yes. No, that's all right. It's kind of a launching thing that goes down into the water there, so... Yeah, that's the official word for it. But yep, no, thank you. I think this is really great, but yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we're not getting ahead of ourselves on the fact of being able to empower them to do those extensions or apply for extensions or anything like that.
No, look, we're definitely working with them to finalise that, and today's resolution gives delegation to the CEO to finalise and outwork that lease.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Very good. That's great. I have a mover on Councillor Churchill, seconded Councillor Holzheimer. All in favour? Hello, all in favour? Okay, that's been carried. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of the officers' reports. Next in our agenda is councillors' reports. Do we have any councillor report? Councillor Davis?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Good morning. Last Wednesday, I had the opportunity to attend the launch of the the local tourism GAPDL committee, Gladstone Region Tourism Strategic Plan from 2026 to 2036. It was wonderful to see that the Deputy Director of Tourism attended, Bridget Woods from Brisbane, and together with Tash Wheeler from the Queensland Tourism Industry Council. There was also other government and community leaders together to mark the important milestone of our region's visitors' economy. As shared during the event, the plan sets the direction for tourism in the Gladstone region over the next decade and reflects the collaboration, ideas and commitment of many across our tourism industry here in the region. The plan comes at a pivotal time as we move towards Brisbane 32 and beyond, as it recognises and amplifies our strengths here in the Gladstone region. The plan recognises that tourism is about far more than visitor numbers. It supports our local businesses, small businesses, creates local jobs, builds confidence, and it encourages our younger generation to see opportunities here at home. When tourism grows sustainably, our entire region benefits. The strategic plan better reflects our First Nation voices here in the region, inclusion and accessibility and tourism industry representation. You can view the plan on the GAPDL's website, which the way the plan has been set out is an easy read and it's great to see. I would also like to acknowledge the hard work of the team at GAPDL who produced the report totally in-house, which was a great cost saving to their members. Supporting the strategy will be the Destination Management Plan currently being finalised and expected to be launched in June this year. This will outline the practical actions required to bring the strategy to life. It is great to see GAPDL shaping the future of tourism here in our region, and I'm excited to see our region's growth in the Queensland tourism industry over the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thanks for doing all those presentations, and you have been working very hard in that space. So thank you on behalf of all of us.
Thank you.
Councillor Wagner?
Yeah, thank you for that. I had the pleasure of attending the Boyne Valley last night, and they've presented us with a certificate of appreciation for the funding that we gave for the Australia Day up there. Apparently it was really well supported. It brought the community together. It met all the goals and objectives of our community investment program. So they received funding through the community event component of that. But they're very, very thankful. So I just want to pass that on to everyone and congratulate the Boyne Valley for putting, the people up the Boyne Valley for putting that event on.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great.
Sorry, can I just say it was the Bullion Many Peaks Community Development Association
Yeah.
this one's from. Thank you.
Yeah, they do a great event every year. So, any other councillor reports, anyone? I think the mayor has mentioned a few things that a few of us attended. Very busy last week with International Women's Day events and a few other things. But yeah.
Can I just say one quick comment?
Of course you can, Councillor
To be sure. Happy St Patrick's Day to all those of Irish heritage.
Oh, well, and with that, I think, there's no urgent business or notices of motion or confidential items. So with that, farewell, thank you very much, and I declare the meeting closed.